Okay, call the Town of Naples Board of Appeals meeting for Tuesday, May 27th, 2025 to order. Everybody would rise and we'd do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the nation which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody get a chance to review the meeting minutes from 4/20/2025?
We need to approve.
Motion to approve?
I move that we approve them as submitted.
I should say I skipped the attendance. We have Craig Shackness, David Bouchard, Russ Lasseter, Skip Meeker. We have Kathy Eady, Kathy Tombarelli, Randy Thurston, representing the town. Okay, first item will be tabled business, which is a public hearing for a request from Tracy and Charlotte Dowd, represented by Jensen Baird, attorneys at law, for an administrative appeal to appeal the code enforcement officer's issuance of a shoreland zoning and building permit on 3/13/2025. The parcel is located at 138 East Shore Beach Road, map lot U4327 in the Shoreland Zoning District. Somebody from the gentleman to the Dowds?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Ryan Lazanik. I'm an attorney at the law firm Jensen Baird in Portland. I represent, as you know, Tracy and Charlotte Dowd, owners of property at 140 East Shore Road in Naples. We're here today to appeal the approval of a shoreline zoning permit and a building permit to rebuild and relocate a deck at 138 East Shore Road, East Shore Beach Road in Naples, excuse me. So I want to keep this relatively short and sweet, and I don't want to spend too much time berating points over and over again. I have respect for your time and acknowledging that we also already did a site walk. But before I get into the merits of what's before us today, I wanted to set the scene just a little bit and explain why this is important before you today. So as you saw at the site visit, I mean, these lots are tiny.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure, please.
You said repair and relocate a deck.
That's correct.
But
Rebuild and relocate, excuse me.
Okay, but it's not on the application to relocate. Just replacing the current deck for the original application. Okay.
So as you saw on the site visit, these lots are really tiny. They're squeezed together. Folks are really living pretty much on top of each other in here. We aren't looking at one of these 1 or 2 acre lots out, in town, that sort of thing. So every foot matters and every inch matters. Not to mention, as you know, these properties are in the shoreline zone of the lake, which require a particularly high level of scrutiny and high criteria to review. We have lakes here in Maine. We have shoreline zoning ordinance for a reason, to protect these natural resources. So I also want to say that this is not about neighbors being nitpicky, and I want to be clear to frame it like that. This isn't about personal grievances. This is about the Dowds protecting their personal property rights, just as anybody else in the town would want to do. So, think about why setbacks exist, right? Land use manuals tell you they protect privacy, they're for utility access, they're for safety, natural resource protection, property rights, etc., right? So I just want you to think about these issues as you deliberate. Not that you don't already, but I really just wanted to start with that really high level presentation. So with that, I wanted to briefly go over a few points and reasons we think that the building and shoreline zone permits should be revoked. So I hope you've all had a chance to review the materials. Again, you've seen the site, but if not, I just want to briefly summarize our arguments. If you turn to page 2 of our letter, to all, you'll see a diagram that's pulled from the building permit application. It shows the placement of what was the current deck, or what was there before it was demolished. I think the diagram gives you a good idea of how small these lots are as well, so I think that's important to know. You can see that the permit application says that the deck was 22 feet away from the Dowd's property line. The deck is also a slight tilt to it in that image. The deck was a pre-existing non-conforming structure because of its proximity to the high water line of Long Lake. But if you flip to the next page, you'll see that the new deck moves over several feet. Right? The plan shows it's 6 feet closer to the Dow's property line. The deck's also straightened out. So the setbacks in the zone are 20 feet. So after measuring, we know that before the deck was moved, it still violated the setbacks on both sides of the property, right? It appears to have been violating the setbacks on both sides of the property, that 20 foot on each side. But now that it's been moved, it's further within the setback on the downside of the property. That tilt moves it a couple feet or something like that, right? The side of the property. And again, we're talking about tiny lots. Every foot matters here. So as you may know, demolishing and rebuilding a non-conforming structure is usually permitted if you build it in the exact footprint of where it was before. Here that was not done. The deck was demolished and it was moved. It was moved closer to the Dow's property line. And that's important because the shoreline zoning ordinance provides that for non-conforming structures in the shoreline zone, in this case the deck, quote, in no case shall the structure be reconstructed or replaced as to increase its non-conformity, end quote. And here the non-conformity is increased because it now increases the burden on the Dow's property line on their sides of the property. It's already this tiny lot. And I think that's the biggest issue that you need to contend with when you're looking at this application. Really briefly, we included 3 other arguments in our appeal application. We wanted to raise the first, because it was unclear whether or not the Maine DEP permit was attached at the time of the application of the building permit. It's not permitted by the shoreline zoning permit application. Second, reconstruction of the deck is not necessary because the deck was not more than 50% destroyed or damaged, and therefore the deck does not need to be replaced as provided for in the shoreline zoning ordinance. The third, and I think we saw this today, is that another crucial issue is that the deck is not 16 feet away as permitted. It's permitted to be 16 feet away from the Dow's property. It is about 9 feet, as we saw today. The deck does not conform to the approved building plans, and therefore the McCarthy's are violating the permit requirements. Naples requires an applicant to submit plans showing what they plan to do or what they want to do, and while this might seem like a minor error, this error allowed someone to build something different than what was approved on a lake. And by a sizable margin, we're not talking inches or a foot here, we're talking multiple feet, right? And so as a practical matter, and as a board, and as a town, should we allow folks to build something unpermitted on the lake and ask forgiveness when they get caught building something that they're not supposed to, right? So I think, look, even if reasonable minds can disagree in the last 3 arguments, I don't think that it's really possible to argue that this increases the nonconformity. It moves into the down setback, it increases the nonconformity, right? And I think once you look at that, you'll conclude that the permit needs to be revoked, setting aside the fact that it's not built as planned. You might be sympathetic to the fact that the deck is already built. However, as you know, anyone who pulls a building permit in the town of Naples is subject to a 30-day appeal, protecting neighbors, right? You might not be aware that somebody just pulled a building permit, right? You're not always notified, right? So when you start building something within 30 days, you take the risk that your neighbors might appeal, right? That's just as a practical matter. So I don't want to drone on. I don't want to be a dead horse. I know other folks got to speak tonight, so I'll leave it at that. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. In your document that you put together here, I just want to make a note that, as you said, some of your comments maybe didn't align quite with what you had here. It says, one of the comments you mentioned was the shoreline zoning ordinance allows the relocation of non-conforming structures provided that the setback requirements are met to the greatest practical extent, as determined by the CEO. And when reviewing such a relocation, the CEO must consider factors such as the size of the lot. So the CEO does have the right to approve a restructure and a relocation, provided they believe that it's in the best interest of all parties based on things like the size of the lot, which you mentioned in your discussion, being so small. Obviously, 20-foot setbacks is probably nothing 20-foot. There's probably no 20-foot setbacks in that whole area. It's so tight, 45 feet. So I just want to make that point that in here you did write that said that.
And I would follow it up to just say that, after that section of the ordinance, says in no case shall the structure be reconstructed or replaced as the increase in nonconformity.
Yep.
And so I view that as saying, look, the CEO has some discretion, but if you're increasing the nonconformity, then that's not triggered. I view it as, you're gonna rebuild it where it is, it's met to the greatest practical extent, then that's fine. But I view that sort of clause at the end as saying, well, in no case you're restructuring or replacing it, Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you speak?
I would.
Of course.
I'm gonna hand out something real quick.
You guys copy them down?
Yeah. All right, hi, I'm Kristen Collins, and boy, you got a liability risk here. Kristen Collins, I'm at the firm Preddy Flaherty, and I'm representing the McCarthys. What I handed out to you and to the appellant's counsel is no fancy argument or anything, it's just some excerpts from the ordinance, so you can follow along with what I'm saying without having to flip back and forth through your big ordinance. I just want to start out by saying, this might not be a nitpicky thing, but it's important to realize that as to that property boundary that we were all looking at earlier at the site walk, that is in dispute. There are competing surveys. For the purposes of this appeal, it actually doesn't matter which one we pick, because the question is going to come down to, is it closer to the line than the structure already was? Is the new deck closer than the structure already was? And the variance between those two surveys is not a wild swing. I think that a valid point was raised at the site walk, that there are some minor discrepancies between the plan and what was built. And it really doesn't relate to the deck so much as the house. It shows the house as being a little bit more towards that property line than it is in comparison to the deck. So I propose as to that, measure it off the new line, the appellant's survey. And I think within a day, the McCarthys could provide a new application that measures what we measured today, just to make sure that what's in the town's record is completely accurate as to what's been built. But I do want to make sure we address this legal issue tonight and get a decision on that. I don't think it matters, again, which line you're measuring from. We all were there and saw it with our own eyes. So the appellant's argument would be spot on if this were a deck that was a standalone deck, let's say down by the shore, and it wasn't attached to the house. Now, I know today when you looked at it, it wasn't attached to the house. That's because they stopped mid-construction. But before, the previous deck was a contiguous sort of stairs down, walkway over to the then angled deck. It's now going to be a straight shot with just one step up, but the fact is that it will still be attached to and part of the structure. So I want to walk you through the ordinance, because the important thing is this isn't a standalone deck, it's part of the structure. And so when we look at these provisions about rebuilding and relocating the structure, which this is, it's both at the same time. When you're rebuilding and relocating, you're allowed to go within, you're allowed to fill in the extent of the setback, but you're not allowed to go any further. And so that's what they've done here. Because it's part of the same structure, they get to go to the furthest extent of that existing structure. So if you look at the three definitions I've provided on the first page here, and we'll focus first on that second one, which is the definition of the accessory structure. So if this were the separate deck down by the shore, it would be an accessory structure. But because it's connected to the house, a deck or similar extension of the principal structure attached to the principal structure is considered part of the principal structure. And then other definitions that sort of hammer that point home. You've got the definition of a structure that does include decks, patios and such. And then if you look at footprint, that's important because, what's the outline of the structure? And the outline of the structure includes the unenclosed structures such as patios and decks. Now, why is that important? Because you have a camp building that's got two pre-existing protrusions that go out further than this reconstructed and realigned deck. So as you saw today, you've got the, I'll call it the walkway that goes off of the stairs down and then steps back up onto the deck. And that, as you measured today, is about 9 feet from the property line. And the closest point that you measured to the property line today of the realigned deck was 11 feet, meaning it is 2 feet further back than the pre-existing closest point to that abutting property line. So we'll flip to now sort of the governing provisions of the ordinance about a relocation and reconstruction. So a relocation can happen provided that the site of relocation conforms to all setback requirements to the greatest practical extent. As you, I think, pointed out, Mr. Bouchard, size of the lot is one of those things that can be considered. There's no way to have taken that pre-existing deck and made it conforming here unless he cut it down to size, and that's not what grandfathering makes you do. You get to keep the extent of your structure. If you're going to relocate it, you can do so. You just have to show that you're doing it to the greatest practical extent. Now, the neighbors on the other side who aren't here tonight, I don't think, they could have come in and complained that if the McCarthys had rebuilt this deck exactly where it was, they could have said, hey, they're rebuilding that deck. Now they need to make it conform to our setback to the greatest practical extent. So you got to align that thing in the middle. That way we're preserving as much setback on our side as on the other side. Isn't that the right thing to do? And that is actually what greatest practical extent involves. It's a tiny lot. We're respecting the fact that it's impossible to meet the setbacks, so we try to find the best fit in the middle. As long as we're not, and that's the second part of that clause, as long as we're not making the structure more non-conforming. And then same thing with reconstruction and replacement. I'll just touch real quick on the fact that one funky thing about shoreline zoning that's always driven me crazy for 20 years that I've been doing this is it makes it sound like it has to be an act of God that's causing that 50% of damage or destruction, but that's not how it's applied by the state or by the towns. That is, if you're voluntarily reconstructing something, this provision still applies. And what it says here is you can reconstruct or replace, again, as long as you're not reconstructing to increase its nonconformity. So, what is an increase in nonconformity? Thank God your definition is there in the ordinance about what that means. And it says, for example, there is no increase in nonconformity with the setback requirement. Here it's talking about water bodies, but the principle's the same. If the expansion extends no further into the required setback area than any portion of the existing nonconforming structure. So our existing nonconforming structure is connected to that deck. It's all the same structure as we already went through. And as you measured today, 9 feet is the closest extent that it gets to that neighboring property setback. And so you can basically fill in that structure through decks. It could have been an expansion of the structure itself, as long as you're not going beyond that 9 feet. So that's what we call a lateral expansion. You go along that setback line, you fill in. People do it a lot with regard to the shoreline setback, not as much with regard to the sideline setbacks. Sideline setbacks actually are not part of state mandated shoreline zoning. That's sort of an add-on in your ordinance. But the principle, again, is the same. you're not creating a new nonconformity here because you're not going into a setback that wasn't already violated. And you're not increasing the nonconformity because you're not going any further than that 9 feet that you already measured was there. And if you look at the diagram on the last page, this is from, it's a sort of old DEP manual. I wish they would update it, but they haven't done so since 2008. But the language that it's sort of trying to exemplify is still the same. This is not an expansion that we're talking about. You know, as you know, the area of the deck didn't increase, but the diagram is really helpful here. So in this diagram, you've got the existing house, that's what's shown as white, and everything with the lined roof is an addition. It shows here this particular house is in violation of the shoreline setback, and the original porch violated that setback up to, doesn't say exactly what it is, looks like maybe 80 feet. And so they let the property owner here extend along that line laterally. You're making a bigger structure. Within that line, you just can't go closer to the shore than that. So kind of the same principle here. If you look along the side of the building, the McCarthy's building, you could basically run that structure through decks or anything up to that protrusion of the walkway or the stairs that go out of the side. Take your pick. It looks to me like the walkway goes a hair further than the stairs. But it's very clear in either respect that neither of them are closer or are further away from the setback than the new deck is. So, because of that, because this is all one structure, because the ordinance pretty clearly allows the owner to extend within that setback as long as you're not going further, it was allowable to issue this building permit. We'll grant you that there are probably some little niggling things that we need to fix on the diagram to make it match up. Happy to run it against that survey line without, conceding that that's the right survey. So we're in active litigation. So I would ask that the board find that the permit was properly issued based on these ordinance provisions, and acknowledge that the applicant is agreeing to correct the diagram and to provide adequate measurements. And I suppose if the appellants wanted to challenge that, they could too, but as long as you're making a decision on the law, that would be really helpful here. Thank you. Any questions for me?
Nope, thank you. Biggest problem I have with this is the application was for replacing a current deck with a new deck, same square footage. So you're basically applying to repair and replace. And that's not what was done. It's a whole new location. It's basically a different size.
Not a different size. I mean, it's maybe a couple inches shorter
It's a different
on
size.
each, yeah. But,
Why do you say that?
the diagram on the
But
application
that's what I'm
shows what
saying.
it
If
is.
they applied to create a new deck
Yep.
with the measurements that are there and the placement that it put in, that would be one thing, to apply for that. And that would, then you could say that's what was granted. What they did is not what was granted on the permit.
What they did was what was depicted on the permit in terms of, we had an angled
I said,
deck.
no, I said
We're
repair
moving
and
it over.
replace.
I know,
Well, repair and
Not
replace
lawyers.
was not done,
not
because
lawyers,
it's different.
yeah. The code enforcement officer
If
though
they-
knew what she was looking
no,
at.
If these people at Dow's hadn't complained, and the code enforcement officer went down upon completion to inspect it, what would he say? This isn't what you applied for. Then what?
And just to make
You
sure
have
I
to remove
understand
it.
right, you mean it's not what they applied for because they didn't describe it as a reconstruction in the application?
Is it relocated?
Relocated it, it's a different size.
But the diagrams in the permit application definitely show the original location, the original size. They show the new location, the new size.
That's all well and good, but they didn't do it.
That was drawn, but that was not on the form,
Right.
is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Recognize Kate Matthews, who's the code enforcement officer
Understood.
on this.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, board.
Hello, Kate.
All right, so I had a discussion on site, very informal, with the McCarthys prior to them submitting this permit to me. And what they had stated at that point was that repair, maintain what was there. There were some trees that Mr. Thurston and I looked at that same time in that general area. So it was basically removing the trees, dumping them out, repairing the deck boards that were there, kind of over those stumps, that type of situation. I had no recollection of them having any conversation with me at that point to change basically the setbacks in any type of way.
Change the attitude of the deck.
Yes, exactly. So, I looked at this, I didn't double check in the fine print just because it's so tiny. But repair, maintain was my expectation from this application. And this is what we review. Supporting documents are they're added, but it's right here on the first page what their intent was to me. And that is based off the conversation I have with them.
So the conversation,
And that was in the field informal.
I understand, but the conversation to repair in place was inconsistent with the application.
So on the
And what was
supporting
drawn,
documents.
and what was drawn.
The supporting documents,
Yeah.
yep.
Thank you, Kate.
May I?
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it would be asking a lot of the applicant to know the specific terms of art that they would have had to put on this one line of the form. The important thing is that they were showing exactly what they were intending to do, which was, it says in their line on the form, it says replacing old deck in disrepair with new deck. Okay, well, what's the new deck? We're gonna look at the supporting documents. The supporting documents clearly show that it's going from a pretty obvious angle with 3 feet measurements on the one side to the pretty obvious straight shot with the new measurements on either side. And it may have been missed, but respectfully, it was right there in the application what they were seeking to do. And for the purposes of what you're doing tonight, you're making a de novo decision. That means you're looking at the application itself and what the applicant is telling you they want to do. And of course, you saw it right there in the flesh. They took out the old deck. They're putting in a new deck. You saw where the old deck went along those trees. It's being relocated to this new location. So those are the ordinance provisions that apply.
It also says, proposed square footage of lot to be covered by non-vegetated surface, no change. Proposed new percentage of impervious area, no change. So, pretty easy to read this, as this is what is being replaced.
Yeah, replaced and relocated.
Well, no, it doesn't say relocated.
Well, the diagram shows it as relocated.
If I may. Right on the front page of the building permit that was submitted, it has setbacks of new construction, and none of these numbers are accurate according to their supply documents that weren't on this first page. And right at the bottom of the page, it says, I hereby certify that the information in this application is complete and correct, and I agree to comply with all town ordinances, plain English. It was signed right under that statement.
And I
And
might
that's
add-
what was provided on our application, and that's what we go by.
And the code enforcement officer is relying on the applicant to provide the accurate information. So that's what they're going by. If it's not accurate,
Not accurate,
It's impo-
not accurate if you're assuming that the survey line that you were looking at today was accurate. They were going off of their own survey that they had had in place
forget the
since they bought the
survey.
place.
It's a different deck.
This is right here, this is their setbacks that they put. And this is what they signed.
I mean, I guess for me, I look at this and I understand what everyone's saying about, it doesn't say on the very first page of the application that we're relocating the deck. But I appreciate what you're saying, the following information, I mean, if I continue to look and I read the whole thing, it very clearly shows that you're moving the deck. I mean, I understand it's a semantic thing on the front page, maybe it's not a semantic thing. It probably would have to be, again, rewritten slightly just to say that, we're replacing the structure with a brand-new deck and it's being relocated. It didn't say it's being relocated. I don't know how big of a deal that is. The following pages clearly show it's being relocated. Right? I mean, you must have looked at it, Kate, and saw that it was being relocated on the supporting documents.
I did not notice that it was being relocated because I believe that we had that same conversation and this front page had totally different numbers. So.
Yeah, I do see that. I
and
noticed that. The numbers are not right.
supplemental material is so tiny and you can barely even read it now, so.
Right.
Based off of our conversation, and yes, I should have looked at those documents, but it clearly asked for that information right on the front page, and if they already had it, why didn't they change that? Because that's what I look at first, are the setbacks on the front page where they sign.
So you do agree that the setbacks that are written here are incorrect?
Yeah, I do actually.
So, I guess I don't know what you would be,
So
how do you resolve
if-
that? There's two things that are issues here on the front
Yeah.
page, and they both have to be resolved.
I think, as we pointed out, even the diagram is a little bit off in terms of the placement of that existing house.
Right.
And it also doesn't show the little protrusion of stairs going off the side, which I think is important and relevant.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, I think that the board would be finding that as to the law, what you saw on the site today would comply because it's all a contiguous structure. But that there are some inaccuracies on the form and that you're directing the CEO to work with the applicant to correct all of that.
So you're saying if somebody gives a false statement on the application with size and setbacks and whatnot, the code enforcement should just accept that?
I want to get Mr. McCarthy up here for just a second because I think it's important that the sort of visits to the property that were made and stuff too. You want to come up?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're stating is that we're lying? Is that what you're stating?
I'm saying the application is incorrect.
You're stating that we're lying.
I said the application is incorrect.
Well, if you look at what we said repair and replace. Repair and replace. Replace means replace the deck.
As it is.
It doesn't say replace the deck as it is. It says replace the deck, and we replace the deck with new material. Where we are doing our repairs are the steps that are going down, the step that is coming up from our house. Those two together are repair and replace. And the way it was built was to essentially build it as well as we could within what we know are going to be 36-inch entryway step up from our platform that was already there, and then the same thing going down to the water, and then replacing those treads, mind you, that are in tough shape, that need to be repaired. But the combination of that is repair and replace. And what I did was add the extra documentation as best I could, based on those boundary lines, that showed exactly where that deck would go. Exactly where that deck would go. And that's what I based the entire application on.
But you said this afternoon you didn't get a survey.
No, we used the survey boundaries that were already available within the town.
There's a pin at the water and there's a pin at the
Yeah, there's a
road
pin
from
at the
their
water and
original
there's a pin,
survey.
in the back. And that's what we used. And then I made, as best I could, assumptions off of those, knowing that the house was closer to the property than the deck would be, and therefore try to maximize by using the same deck dimensions, it was 16.4 by 16.4, we went 16 by 16. And it was all with that intent. So if you're saying that we actually tried to falsify, that's not correct.
I think I just figured out what actually happened. I'm gonna ask you if this seems
Sure.
right to you. Because clearly you wouldn't, the lot is how wide, 40 feet-ish?
45 at the water.
Okay. So
25 at the back.
you wouldn't have possibly thought that it was 35 feet from one setback and 35 feet from the other? If you look at the form, and I'm filling it out, I think what you might have been doing is it says right side, left side, setback from high water line.
Yes.
You put 35, 35, 35. Were you thinking it wanted you to measure the setback from the water from
Yes.
each of those points?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's gotta be, because that would have been the world's biggest lie, because you would have then had a 70 plus the width of the house foot wide lot.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I think that it's just a
Okay.
lack of clarity in the form.
Yeah.
But the diagrams are right if you are allowing them to rely on their own survey that they've always used, not the new survey that they're in dispute over. But again, happy to run it off of either survey. It really doesn't matter as long as it doesn't get closer.
So there's some inconsistencies between the form and what was actually in the drawings. Should we have noticed that and then thrown it back in their case, in their lap to say, you need to revise that because it looks like it's a repair, replace, and relocate as well? And if there was any other inconsistencies there, would we be here if that conversation had taken place?
No.
Do you mind?
If it-
I didn't know if I had a chance to
No,
respond to
go ahead.
any, is that okay, just a minute or two?
You got it.
I think your decision here is relatively straightforward. I mean, it seems like you need to jump through a lot of hoops to make this work, you know? What's being built is not what's on the plan. What's being built is what your own code officer is telling you was not what she understood to be built. I would say, I just wanted to point out really briefly insofar as whether or not the deck is a part of the structure of the house. The house hasn't always been there. The house is relatively new. I don't know how many years old it is, but it's relatively new. That deck was its own structure. The house is built up to the deck. And so I would argue that that deck is really its own structure. It has been historically, if you're going into, grandfathering. That deck's been its own structure. And so if you're expanding that deck outward, you are expanding its nonconformity, right? And I think under the logic that, well, if the house is this wide, then you can build anything out to as wide as the house is. You could build a giant rectangle down the lot, all the way down to the water and all the way up to the road, and you could be right up at your neighbor's sides the entire time, if that was the way that we interpreted this. And I think that given that the deck is a separate structure, that nonconformity can't be expanded. And again, I think this is pretty straightforward. What is being built is not what's approved, and it's infringing on people's property rights in town. And in my view, I'm not saying anyone did anything maliciously, but I view this as you made an error. Part of what your job is to review errors made by the town, code enforcement officer, the applicant, whoever, right? You're reviewing an error. There was an error made here. So the remedy to that is to toss the permit, right? And so that's how I view it. The doubts about a survey come out. You saw the survey, sticks out there with orange on them. I haven't seen a survey from the other property, so I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward that what was approved does not line up with what is being built. I think your job is pretty simple here. I don't think you need to justify it through jumping through hoops. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So what we're dealing with is an appeal from the doubts about the building permit. And that's what we're dealing with. I think the remedy would be to say that what's there now is not what was on the permit, and send it back to the code enforcement officer with the new dimensions what has been done and why. But clearly, what's there now is not what was applied for, I don't believe. So, were the Dowds okay with them replacing what was there?
I was about to mention, I think we wouldn't be here if the deck was built where it originally was.
Right.
I also think that's something to think about too. The deck moved. If the deck was where it was, it's always, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on, right? We wouldn't have an issue with it, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on, but the deck has moved and it increases non-conformity.
What if they built it to the plan according to this, meaning 16 feet versus the 11 that it's at now?
I think our view would be that it still increases the non-conformity, although I don't know that how given how big the lot is, if that's even
Well, that's what I mean.
possible.
It's,
Well, like,
it was 22 and 16.
Right.
And then what I thought they were going to do was make it 16 all the way, the full way.
And turn it.
But instead, they shifted the whole thing
Right.
3.5 feet roughly towards the Dow's property. Had they not done that,
There would
would
be-
that have been an issue? Would
No,
that have still been an
had
issue?
they rebuilt it where it was, there'd be no issue.
I understand that part. If they built it where it was, no issue. But if they had built it and it was 16 feet the whole way, which lines up with the house,
Yeah,
would
on
that have
the
been
corner, the
acceptable?
corner of the house matched the same, the setback from the side on the corner of the house matched the corner of the furthest right part of the deck as you're looking towards the water, is what you're saying, correct?
Because what they ended up doing is putting it right dead in the middle of the property, relieving the setback on one side. Of course, increased, they increased it on this side. Now, obviously, that wouldn't be great for you guys because now your stairs, when you come down, you wouldn't be able to walk up onto the deck because it would be, if you moved it to the left 3.5 feet, which is what this says. I'm still just wondering if 16 feet would have been acceptable.
We are not,
I don't know.
we're not code enforcement. and
Right.
We're not solid.
That's fine.
So what we're dealing with is what's in front of us, which is an appeal of the permit. So, which I would make a motion to grant the appeal on the permit.
I'll second it.
And seconded,
If we could get
we have,
elaboration of what that means, because there was a legal question that was raised that was really important. If the issue is just that the permit doesn't match up with what was built, then we will respectively just withdraw that permit and come back with a new one. And if they want to appeal that on the law, we'll come back and do this again. But if we're not working off the same correct information,
we are,
we shouldn't get to the legal question, which is what just granting the appeal would do.
well, we're granting the appeal of the permit. Now, if they want to come back and change the permit, that's fine.
If you grant the appeal, what you're saying is that any extension of this deck towards their line doesn't comply with the ordinance because it's increasing the setback. That's one of their arguments. So it would be, you're agreeing with every single one of their arguments. But I think
No.
what you're saying is we can't get there yet because the permit application is
What
not.
we are doing is, the motion is about the actual permit, not anything about setbacks, not anything about where this is. It was changed. It's not what was presented on the permit. That's what we're dealing with.
Thank you.
And
That's all
that's
I
what
needed to
we
hear.
will-
Because
That's what will be upholding.
there's a fancy legal
I'm
thing
sorry?
called claim preclusion. And if there was a claim made here and you granted that claim, that's done as a matter of law, and we wouldn't be able to come back and
Right, that's why I say-
address this again.
We are dealing with
The permit.
the permit itself.
Yeah.
Right.
We're keeping it simple, just the permit.
Right.
Whatever happens after this between the CEO.
CEO and
town,
then
we're
respective
done.
parties.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is that clear?
So what's the motion again? Say it again.
Then we're gonna
We're gonna grant the appeal
grant the appeal about the permit
of the
only.
permit only.
Grant the appeal
That the
as it
permit-
relates to the permit only.
Right.
Okay.
Do we have a
We
vote?
already seconded.
All those in
We-
favor?
Correct, and second.
Unanimous? All those opposed? Okay, it's 3-1, some majority. The appeal is granted on the permit.
On the permit.
Okay, next order of business. We have an application from Deborah Simpson for a 10-foot setback on a side, on the right-hand side of the yard. I'm sorry.
Never done this before.
Okay, you're just here basically to clear up a mistake, as I take it.
Okay. In August of '23, I had a carpenter who has done some work for me inside the house had offered to build a carport for me. I didn't realize he hadn't pulled a permit until like a year later. I came back down here to get the paperwork, and when I got the paperwork, come to find out, he thought it was a 10-foot setback. I don't know where he got that, but it's obviously 20. So it was like a double whammy. I'm trying to fix what he didn't do then and the 20-foot setback. I took the paperwork home, I filled it out. 3 weeks later, when I come back in with my paperwork as best I can, we had trouble finding the property line, and so we did the best we could with what we could figure out. When I get the paperwork back in, come to find out the back of my property is in a flood zone, so then I had to get a FEMA survey done. So I couldn't find anybody locally, and I found a gentleman in Portland. The gentleman in Portland came out in, I want to say January or February. It took him that long before he could come out. He didn't want to do it, and I talked him into it to just say, I don't have anybody, I can't find anybody. So he did do the survey, and I hope you have that.
We do.
Okay, so that's done, and that's where I'm at. It took me a while, only because he took so long, months and months it took him before he would come out and do it. And you have, I think, a letter from my neighbor where it's
Yes.
on that side. I'm looking for the setback, and I paid the fines for the permit, I think. I think I'm okay on that part. Where the carport is not in the flood zone, not even close to the flood zone. But I didn't even know. I mean, it's weird, that whole flood zone thing. I don't really understand it, but it is what it is.
It's a federal government.
I'm not alone.
Don't try to get a loan without flood insurance.
Oh, really?
Oops, I'm speaking out of turn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm lost on that whole flood, because I don't, when you get a permit, to me, when you get a permit, it fiscally helps the town by expanding the taxable rate. I get that part. What I don't get is what the flood zone has to do with, why does it have to be a FEMA survey instead of just a plain old survey? But I'm sure smarter people can know.
But you're done. And you have a survey. Okay, any questions? I mean, it's basically just an honest mistake.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have any problem with it.
We're gonna make it easy for you.
No biting.
You do look
Okay.
like a biter.
We'll make a motion.
Sure, motion
Grant the
will,
appeal.
yeah, motion will grant,
Grant the setback.
grant the setback.
Second,
Grant the setback.
Second, all those in favor? So moved.
go. It's easy.
You're all set?
That
Am I
was
done?
easy. That one was easy.
It was? It's like that commercial.
The big red easy button.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is an application from Wayne E. Dunbar. A 10-foot side setback. On property 692 Roosevelt Trail.
Trail,
Mr. Dunbar?
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, I want to thank you all for coming in here in your evenings and doing this.
Sure.
I can't imagine spending a lot of evenings doing this. I moved to town, or I purchased a property. Tomorrow it will be 2 months ago. I'm trying to have the property become mixed. It's now commercial property. I want to reside in the property. This is totally separate. And part of my wanting to have it become partially residential is I'm looking to put a garage on the property. And when I'm looking at putting a garage on the property, mainly because there's no storage in the building right now, or very little. And I'm looking where to place it. It would, I think, be more appealing and fit better on the property if it was closer to the sideline or back line of the property itself, rather than being 20 feet away. It was my understanding that I could apply for a variance and have it be 10 feet away, and a neighbor presented an opinion on my request and indicated that it's 15 versus 10 because it's side versus back. The property is on Roosevelt Trail, mailing address, but it's also on Bay Village Road, so apparently that changes whether it's 10 feet as a variance or 15 feet as a variance.
Usually, we would consider Roosevelt Trail the front of the property.
Yep.
So that would mean where the garage is going is the back of the property.
And what I'm planning on doing is making so that the entrance to the residence part of the building would be on Bay Village as opposed to on Roosevelt Trail.
Okay, but right now,
Right now, it's Roosevelt
it's the
Trail.
way it is, so to speak.
So it's straightforward. This is not encroachment, anything that's happened in the past. It's my request, trying to do it up front and say, if possible, I'd like to be closer to my neighbor's property line.
Okay. Is the abutters here? Are you done? Sorry.
I'm all done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak? All right.
Not really. I mean, I think we said everything in the letter. We just think he can put it somewhere else. He doesn't have to put it there.
Okay.
There's no hardship. And that's what he's looking for. Mr. Dunbar's looking for a hardship.
So you're saying someplace with a full setback?
So if it, as you look at my small little screen there, if it moved back towards where the leaching field is, to the extent that it was 15 feet back as opposed to 10 feet, is that, because that's what we would be allowed to do, right?
Correct.
Even without a hardship, he can, Mr. Dunbar can request a 15-foot setback.
5.
So it would be 5 further feet back. So as you're sitting on Bay Village Road, looking at the property, you're over here, his building is there, there's an existing small building, and right now he's proposing the 30 by whatever over here, and it's within 10 feet of your property line. If it goes back this way, whatever number of feet it would be to become 15 feet.
He
So-
would have to push forward.
It would,
Towards Roosevelt. He's saying 10 feet from the back lot line, but really the setback should be 15 feet at least, and 15 would be with the variance.
Correct.
So there's no impact to the leach field if he would have put it 20 feet, like you're proposing, just follow the normal 20-foot setback. If you go 20 feet, you gotta move it towards the leach field, but it wouldn't be anywhere near the leach field, or would it be an issue with the leach field?
In order to be further away from their property line,
Yeah,
I would not be closer to the leach field per se, I'd be closer to Route 302, or
Yeah.
Roosevelt Trail.
right, closer, okay.
And what that would do, which I was trying to avoid, it would be more or less out my front door of what I'm proposing to become
No,
a residence.
I think we might be explaining, because I'm looking at the diagram, so if you, again, if you move it straight back, so it's parallel to the line of the left-hand side of your home, of the existing structure, you could get that 15 feet. Why don't you come here and take a look?
20
You don't mind.
What's the difference, 15 or 20, right?
Yeah, so if you were to take this and move it here, move it back this way, right, still keep,
Correct.
the orientation would be the same, but the 10, you wouldn't be, that way you wouldn't be within the 10 feet of their property line.
I
which
would
is-
be 20 feet if I came all the way over here, but I'd be very close to the leaching field.
Yeah.
That's why I was trying to avoid getting close to the leaching field. And if I come 20 feet this way, then I start running into the distance.
Yeah, I
setback
wouldn't
from
ask,
this.
no, I wasn't gonna suggest that.
And then it puts it right, this is will become the front door of the resident portion of the building.
Yeah.
So I was trying to not have it be right in the middle.
The ordinance though says it's side lots though. It's side lots.
Right, yeah, I
Not
didn't
back.
realize that.
Yeah,
This is what he's applying.
Yeah, but they did a rough drawing showing what's going on. This is from them. They put the color. You guys put a colored area showing where it could be located and still follow the normal setback.
And follow the 20-foot.
Follow the 20-foot setback, right, the yellow right here is what they did, right?
yeah, just slide this that way.
Well, it has to slide that way a little and then out a little.
Yeah,
Nice to be popular.
I mean, I don't know, it seemed, I took a quick look at it when I was just driving by 302. I mean, it looked like they could do what you're saying, but I don't know. Didn't seem like there would be anything really, again,
Randy, what issues is there building it that close to the leaching field?
You're only required a setback of 20 feet. So,
From the leaching field?
Yep, and I don't believe that is even close to that either way, so. I don't know the distance, even if you move that building
I know
back
there's, yeah,
per the diagram, but I believe you have well over 20 feet there.
Well, number one, we can't grant this as applied.
What's that?
Number one, we can't grant this as applied because it's asking for a 10-foot side setback.
Right.
10-foot setback on the back of the lot as opposed to a side lot.
It's actually the rear line.
So the
That's the
closest,
ordinance.
if I figured out which side was front and which side was side, you're saying an appeal that might be considered to be 15 feet, 10 is out of the question because it's
We are allowed to grant,
15 away that,
Right.
you'd be 15 feet away from the line.
I just have a question as
Sure.
I'm an owner on Bay Village Road. This doesn't really affect me, I just have a question. What is the setback of the side of the garage? Because there's two setbacks here, it seems like there's Bay Village Road itself, and then there's the abutter's property.
Correct.
What is the setback from the road? Because that would be the side of the garage, and then the abutter's property would be the back of the garage.
Our setbacks are 20 feet all the way around.
Oh, okay.
Other towns have different ones to the road or to the sides or to the back. Ours are consistently 20 circle in the building.
And on sides, we can go to 10 feet. Front and back, we can go to 15 feet.
So, basically, he's gonna have to reapply.
This is like the first one. Yeah, we grant the appeal and then they reapply.
Yeah. Yeah,
Can't-
because that's not correct. You can't grant 10 feet
Right.
on what that paperwork says, correct?
Unfortunately, that's what we're faced with. It's kind of what we just went through earlier. If this doesn't conform with what the ordinances are, we can't grant it. But you can reapply with as a rear. And
So, you want a motion?
Yeah,
So I move we grant the appeal to deny the permit for the 10-foot setback based on the ordinance that only allows us to do 10 feet on the back line of a property. Does that make
5
sense?
feet,
Second.
5 feet.
Is that
Can't
worded
do, we can't
correctly?
do 10 on the rear,
Yeah, is that
except
worded correctly?
except for the 10 feet, yeah. We can't,
Because we can't do 10, because we cannot do 10 feet as a variance.
well, basically, granting the appeal because the application, the permit is incorrect. It has
We're
listed-
granting the appeal is what you're saying?
Yeah.
So the motion is to grant the appeal.
Motion is to grant the appeal, yeah.
I'm sorry, but I think I'm the appealing party.
No, you're,
I'm the one that
They're
submitted
appealing.
the appeal, and my neighbors have
oh,
said they don't
they're just,
want me to have that granted.
okay, that's right, okay.
I'd
That's
love
right.
for you to
Yeah.
mistakenly approve it. I know, gee, you
We have a
make a
circular
Well, that's why I
logic.
say, if we just make a motion that we can't, we're
We can't,
granting the appeal because this application, because the,
It's an incorrect application based on.
Correct.
ordinance.
because the,
Yeah.
right, the application for setback reduction is incorrect.
right. I second.
I think I just made a motion.
Yeah, I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
There we go.
It's approved.
Thank
Okay, thank you for coming, sorry for the mix-up.
No, not a problem, thank you.
Okay, do you have any other business?
Move to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn? What's that?
What about my card?
Second?
Got something for him?
No, we did that.
Yes, we did.
Oh, you did that?
Okay, motion adjourned, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved, we are adjourned.